Hi, welcome to another episode of Queer View Mirror, a show about queer people, by queer people, for queer people, and our allies. I am Don.
And I'm Scott.
We are going to be talking about an exhibit that's happening down in Victoria. And to get to more details, let's go to Scott.
Joining us today is Jelena Putnik from the Maritime Museum of British Columbia, and she's here to talk about the Queer at Sea exhibit.
It was very exciting and very interesting to talk to Jelena, and we can't wait to get to the interview. But before that, we gotta do this. I gotta say, this is Queer View Mirror coming at ya! I am so excited about today's interview, but I will let Scott tell you the details.
Well, I mean, who knew that queer people had such a rich and storied history out on the ocean? The Maritime Museum of British Columbia put together so many stories, pictures, mementos, videos from queer people all over the province of BC and put them into this beautiful exhibit.
I'm sure there's a lot of fascinating stories that we will hear and we will see in this beautiful exhibit. Let's go to the interview with Jelena right now. Today we're going to be talking about something very exciting and very interesting, and I'm going to let Scott tell you all about it.
Thanks, Don. There is a really exciting exhibit happening right now in Victoria, and joining us to tell us all about it is Jelena Putnik. Jelena, why don't you tell us about it?
Hi, you guys. Thanks for having me here. So the exhibit is being put on by the Maritime Museum of British Columbia, located in Victoria, and we're doing an exhibit called Queer at Sea, Tales of the 2S LGBTQ plus community. So it's this beautiful exhibit that's going to be running from May 17th to November 5th, and it spans a whole kind of spectrum of people's stories. We have over the last, I'd say 4 to 6 months, have been soliciting people's stories, input from individuals within the queer community across the province, and especially on the coast, and everyone that is in some way, shape or form linked to the maritime environment, and have just received this flood of stories and pictures and videos, and that is all being integrated into an exhibit that is linked with our collection, like the items that we have in our museum collection. And it is going to be very multimedia and really accessible to a whole bunch of, very diverse audience.
Well, I love stories and people who tell stories. So why don't we start with your story? How did you get involved with this wonderful project?
Well, I'll tell you a little bit about myself first.
Okay.
So as a kid, I joined Sea Cadets. I was 13, and a friend of mine's dad made her go, and we all felt sorry for her. All my friends, we all did, until she came back and told us how much fun she was having. So we then all joined, a whole bunch of girlfriends of mine, like little 13-year-olds. And what evolved out of that was just this love for sailing, this love for the maritime environment, and just the excitement and fun of being part of a youth group that went to summer camps and went on trips, and just learned a lot and experienced a lot. So lots of skills, and in that is kind of like where I became a sailor, where I became a mariner. And I went on to become a cadet officer and teach navigation and leadership. Just, I was probably involved for about 10, 12, 15 years.
Oh, wow.
But, during that time, my own evolution as a human, as an adult, a young adult, was happening. And being queer within that environment was kind of mixed, Definitely as youth, you're kind of not carrying the baggage of former generations. Mm-hmm. So we were just kind of on the wave of that gay rights movement and all the activism that was happening around that. So in our heads and in the way we were just, like we were self-advocates. At the same time, we were within a structure that sure as heck didn't really like that.
Yeah.
And so there was homophobia, and there was it was kind of, things were under the radar, I'd say. And then and even as a young officer, I at one point, and I didn't even know what was happening to me, because it was just totally out of the blue, where I got asked to go into a meeting, and there was some out of uniform investigators of some sort, and I don't even know to this day whether they were military police or CSIS or something. And it was just at the time, at the end of the LGBTQ purge that was happening within the civil service, the federal civil service and the military. And they were asking me just very odd and intimidating questions. And I finally said, what is this about? Like, and the thing is, I didn't have any advocate, I didn't have anyone. And it wasn't until later in hindsight that I really understood the possible severity of that whole engagement, and luckily nothing came of it, but still that piece was frightening, and it really gave me a lens into the kind of systemic trauma that individuals faced in the military, in the civil service, if they were queer.
Oh, I see. So you mentioned something like a purge. You think there was a purge going on at the time?
Yeah, so there was actually legislated. It was within policy, the federal policy. It happened between the years, I think, around just post-war, like early 50s, and it went on right up to the late 80s, early 90s. And since then, there's been civil suits that have been filed by people who were impacted by that. So what happened was that the military police and federal government, through the military police and through CSIS, went and on a bit of a witch hunt.
Wow.
And they identified, the rationale was that queers were a threat to security. To,
really?
Federal, to national security. So there was this purge that started to happen, and they would.
And we're talking about Canada. This is Canada we're talking about.
Yeah.
Well, okay.
So they would go undercover. They'd go into gay bars. They would go interrogate people, and sometimes there was violence against the people they were interrogating. And so both women, men, and trans folks were part of this. And people were made to confess, and then they were fired, and their whole lives were ruined by this experience. Not only the personal trauma of going through that, the persecution, but also like career-wise, people like say in the RCMP, they were really successful, really loved by their superiors, by their juniors, their peers were just all of a sudden gone, and then it was really hard to get jobs after. So there'd be something to look up if you haven't, to get more familiar with that history. But so that piece, that's the ugly piece of the some of the history that's impacted definitely in the maritime sector.
Well, I guess it's all over. Like it's the maritime, it's the army, it's the Air Force. Everybody went through that. So I'm interested to know, from your perspective, your personal experience, how did you get through that?
Yeah, so I mean,
were you considered out at the time?
No.
Well, understandably.
I mean, I was within. The thing is, I was in the cadet movement, which is kind of like it's not full time. It's something that I'd leave. I'd go to university at SFU, and the reality there in the student populace was much different. We were talking political stuff around LGBTQ rights and social justice in general, right? So anyhow, it wasn't something, and because it was just at the end of it, it really quickly changed. It was very interesting for me because I left and I came back a couple of years later to visit the camp, summer camp, lots of kids, I don't know, 3,000 kids.
Wow.
And really fun place, beautiful location in Comox. So I was there, and someone said, "Hey, did you hear? You know, our friend, so a friend of ours, a younger person that I knew, had transitioned and was being supported by the commanding officer, by all the senior officers. They just announced, from now on, you will call them so such and such, and from now on, they will be addressed as this." And it was this wonderful, and so I was really.
It's a new day.
I
Yeah.
know, it's totally, and they were having pride parades. It was just a totally different atmosphere. And at that time, I remember going up to the commanding officer and saying, "You know what? You're doing good. You're doing the right thing. This is what should be done, and I'm really glad you're supporting them." So that was the quick change that happened, and I think that's what we're seeing now. And so now, kind of stepping forward, like to today. So I'm on the board of MMBC, the Maritime Museum of BC. I'm chair of the Diversity, Equity, Accessibility, and Inclusion Committee. And one of the big focuses of our board in general, and I just joined like a year ago, but the board, when I joined, this focus was already in place, and they had, they said, we represent the maritime communities and the history. And we have to be honest in that. We have to honestly represent that. We can't just represent the power holders of the time, the white power holders of the time. We need to represent the diversity of that honestly reflects all those experiences, whether there be of various ethnic groups, the LGBTQ community, women, and their specific roles within the maritime environment, all of that. So that is where this came from. And I guess about 2 years ago, our chair was out east in Halifax and came across a Hey Sailor exhibit that looked at workers, gay men working on the transcontinental ships, the passenger boats. And so he thought it was a great exhibit, and he said, we need to do something. And just at the same time, our staff were approached by a trans individual who had retired and wanted to give all their artifacts to the museum. So it was just a perfect synergy, and we thought, yeah, it's time.
How did you get involved with the Maritime Museum to begin with?
Well, I was friends with one of the board members that said, "Hey, I think you'd be great on our board." So I agree. I was just really excited to be on it.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So since when have you been involved with this project?
For about a year now, we've been working on it. Yeah. First in our committee, kind of coming up with ideas of what we wanted to look like, how we wanted to approach this. And we knew that we wanted to hear people's voices, that we weren't the ones telling the story. It was the community telling the story.
Okay. So is this the first time this is happening?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
And how did you find the people to share their stories?
Well, some of them came to us like that individual just walking through the door, and others we connected with like the trans archives at UVic, and we connected with other queer organizations, but mostly we just put it out there. We put it out there on our social media. We did press releases, and lots of media picked up, and we had great coverage. And so people started to phone, they started to email, and they started to send in emails. And we had set up a little portal where people can either anonymously or not submit things.
Oh, okay.
And so we got a selection of things. Some of them, many people did it non-anonymously, like they provided their name, but some people chose to be anonymous for their own safety or personal comfort.
Oh, okay. Well, now another point of interest is, so you gave the working title "Queer at Sea: Tales of the 2S LGBTQ plus community," and so I want to focus on that word "queer" because you identify as queer as well, as we were discussing a while ago, and you have encountered, as we have, people who are not comfortable with that word queer. So would you care to elaborate on that?
Yeah. I'd say it's a mostly a generational thing. As we know, words evolve. What is used today will likely not be used 20, 30 years from now. Just like what was used 20 or 30 years from now is not what's used today. And so I'd say queer probably became a more common word in the late 80s, early 90s, I'd say, maybe even late 90s. It's a much more encompassing word. So sometimes it's difficult to make sure you cover everybody and include everybody in the descriptors that you use. So we just decided to go with queer because in our eyes it is inclusive of the 2S LGBTQ plus community.
I see.
And some of our older members that were not members, but some of the folks that applied to tell their stories really didn't feel comfortable. They didn't identify with that word because 40 years ago, if they're in their 80s now, 40, 50, 60 years ago, that word was used like a weapon, that word was really used against them, and they didn't identify with it. So for the younger generations, it's a beautiful empowerment word, but not for some of the older.
Well, there are still some people who don't want to be identified as queer. They'd rather say, I'm gay, but I'm not queer. Okay. Well, I'll send them to Scott for a little orientation.
Yeah, your homo orientation. We're still working on that.
Your QSL, queer as a second language.
So in putting all this together, what is the intention moving forward? What do you hope to accomplish?
Oh, we hope to have that personal connection to people and stories, to have a visibility, queer and trans individuals on the sea has been around since time immemorial. Their stories being profiled, not so much. So that's what we hope, is that becomes much more visible, and individuals can come and they can reflect on it. And, it's the stories range, right? So some of them are beautiful love stories, and some of them are more difficult stories, and some of them are just stories of frustration, of not being able to be yourself, or not being able to combine two of your passions, right? So your sense of self as a queer, or however you identify, individual, with your passion for your career or for the maritime environment, or those two. That's unfair, but in many of the stories there is a beautiful synergy that at some point happens.
So by far, the stories you have collected are all from within the country or the province, or are there stories from other parts of the world?
They're mostly, there are stories from here, although some of them, as people's lives take the trajectories, they go to other parts of the world and come back. So there are stories, and they vary, like from tugboat drivers to lighthouse keepers to biologists to Coast Guard people to admirals even.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
So walking into the exhibit, what can one expect to see? Like what kind of exhibit is it?
Yeah, it's a good question. So there's going to be panels, big panels with photos and lots of stories reading.
Oh.
There's going to be videos, and there's going to be slideshows, like stories and images. There's going to be artifacts that are linked to all that. And one of the big things, one of the things we really hope to do is to help people understand that quite often a lens gets brought to the artifacts that we hold in our exhibit, So you're looking at something and you're going, oh, I can imagine this belonged to a captain, and this captain was, and you start to create a story, a narrative of what that person looked like, everything, gender, race, age, economic status, all this stuff. But those stories are perhaps true, but perhaps not true. That they could be the queer stories, they could be the people of color stories, they could be all this, because we don't, much of history we don't know. We know some, but we don't know all. So it's important for us to kind of make sure that people make that connection, that there's actually multiple stories that could be linked to those objects.
Could you refer to one in particular right now, like that you've come across?
Like artifacts?
No, a story that you've come across.
Oh,
Something like a story
Yeah,
that stood out for you when you were putting all these things together.
yeah. You know what? One interesting individual who's actually since passed away, passed in 2017, is Stephanie Castle. So Stephanie Castle was a trans activist and wrote, had a newspaper and wrote many books and was engaged very much in trans activism. But Stephanie Castle, with her other hat in her previous life and leading up to it, and even there was of course overlap, was a British naval officer and wrote maritime history books for like I don't know, like 40 books or something crazy. Wow. Was like a huge historian and writer within the maritime community, and then transitioned, and later in life, like in her 60s, to be her true self, to come out as her true self. And that piece just shows the magnitude of involvement and contribution to the maritime community that our community, our queer community, or the trans community has given. And like it's really nice, because I think that sometimes, especially individuals who've been very kind of been hearing only a certain narrative, just don't even believe that exists, right? And then you go, actually, it always has, and it always, it's been here. So Stephanie's is one of the stories. But there, I don't want to wreck it and let you guys know all the little
of course,
love stories and the other great things that are going to be part of this exhibit. I want you to come. I want you to
definitely
and listen, and yeah.
So we understand you've got a few special events coming up through this as well. Would you like to speak to that?
Yeah, let's start with the launch. When's the launch again?
What's that? Oh, the launch?
Yeah, I'll book a day off. I gotta be there.
I'll invite you to the launch. The launch starts on the 17th of March. That's when the exhibit opens.
Okay.
May.
May. So the 17th of May will be the launch?
Yeah, we're having a by invitation reception in the evening, but the actual museum is opening up on the 17th to everybody.
And where's the museum located?
It's located, good gosh, I don't have the address, but I should find it out.
Yeah, we'll just direct our audience to...
It's located on Douglas Street.
Okay.
When you go down, right next to the Convention Center entrance on Douglas Street. And if you're facing the Convention Center entrance, it's to your right, and that is the Maritime Museum.
Okay, wow. I'm excited. I love the ocean. Maybe it's because I was a mermaid in a past life.
I
think your hair is like working with that.
It's just your blue hair, Dawn.
Well, truth be told, there is a shade of blue that's called mermaid.
Is there?
Yep. And when we were going to, I don't think this is the one, but she was making me, my colorist was asking me to select. She said, there's this kind of blue and that kind of blue, and there was a blue color that was labeled as mermaid blue. I think this
I
is
love
it.
it. I love it.
Okay, enough
Well, you
about
know
your
what?
hair,
Okay.
Dawn. Back to the interview.
Yeah,
All
back
right.
to the interview, and I
But the
want
launch will be on
Dawn,
May
I want to
17th.
challenge you to embrace your mermaid self, because I'd love if you brought that to our Queers Funk music event.
What's
Oh.
that about? Okay, tell me about more about that. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's that about?
It's kind of like, should I put on my badge? This is
Sure.
kind of related but not related. This is like my Hey Sailor sexy badge.
I want one.
Can you
I
see
like
it?
sailors.
Yeah, that's great.
Queers Funk is a band out of Vancouver.
Oh, really?
They are amazing. They are a 10-piece funk band that blows the roof off of anywhere they perform.
Mm-hmm.
And so for the last 8 years, I've been, prior to COVID, I have been bringing them over annually for a dance, event for our community. And it has always been a sellout. And so now for 2 years, we have not been able to do this. So during this 2 years, I've been involved with the Maritime Museum, and then the Queer at Sea exhibit came. So I thought, oh my gosh, this would be perfect to do, because I always used to put on these events as a fundraiser for something. So I thought this would be perfect. Let's do it for a fundraiser for the Maritime Museum and the diversity, equity inclusion work that we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're putting on this event June the 10th, and the wonderful Admiral has let us use the Bay Street Armories, which is a very large historic building.
Wow.
And we're just getting everything set up. Tickets just went on sale and they're selling fast. And so they're $30, and we are going to have some ruckus sea shanty singing at the beginning as an opening act kind of, and then the funk hits the hits the floor.
Oh, wow.
And it'll be fun. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, everyone should look them up if you haven't seen them. queersfunk.com.
Okay, it's already in my notes.
I saw them several times years and years ago when I lived in Vancouver. So yeah, they're just wonderful.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's great.
Mm.
Yeah,
So the launch will be
it's
on the
gonna be
17th.
kind of like a sailor theme or a maritime theme. So like
Mhm.
the mermaid would work so well. I wish you would come and wear
Yeah,
it.
I'll let 7 sailors carry me into the scene. I'll plan it.
Yes.
Or maybe I'll come in an
Theme.
I'll come in an aquarium that will roll into the floor or something.
Okay, calm down, Dawn. You're getting all excited.
I think this is getting very elaborate. I love it.
You had me at mermaid. You started all the mermaid. Well, isn't there other stories of mermaids in the maritime stories that you?
There are. They kind
Really?
of serenade and they lure the sailors.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So after the 17th, the exhibit will continue all the way till November 5th. You said
Mhm.
in the same venue.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, so people can come anytime. There'll be, yeah.
But if I understand correctly, the Queer at Sea is just part of the whole thing, which is the Maritime exhibit or the Maritime Museum, isn't it?
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah, we are a museum that kind of got displaced a few years ago because we were in a beautiful heritage building. Yeah, the Maritime Museum building that we were in a number of years ago had to be seismically upgraded. So we had to move out. So the space we're in is a bit smaller than we usually have. So a lot of our things are in storage. But we are working on getting a new space that is near the water and that is, the future home for the Maritime Museum.
I see. So how long has the Maritime, this association existed? You just got started?
No. The Maritime Museum has been around for decades.
I see.
Yeah.
But the queer
the
at sea concept just got started.
Just got started, yeah.
I see. Okay, very good. That's very important to note, so I'll put that on my notes as well. So the Queer at Sea sort of like category, or the Queer at Sea
Exhibit,
exhibit came into play with the Maritime Museum of BC.
Yeah.
Just this year.
Just this year. Yeah. Yeah. It was just, the museum every year has has a couple of big exhibits that they rotate through, and they get planned in advance. And so this was one of them. And it is, it's very much community engaged. Sometimes exhibits are a little bit more static, where you just pull things out of your artifacts out of storage or out of, and place them and tell the story that is linked to them. And this exhibit has a little bit of that, but it also has, as I said, much more of the stories from the community.
I see.
And we've had some great response, like very much lots of good support and engagement from some of the big players like BC Ferries or Coast Guard or the fishing or the tugboat communities. Yes, and of course, lots of individuals who are, either recreational mariners or like belonging to some of the yacht clubs or sailing associations.
So it looks very exciting. I'm definitely going to do some of the events. So what do you think, Scott?
I think it's amazing. And, I'm so excited to see kind of an unexpected queer representation and, a little bit more of our history. I think it's just wonderful. Is there anything else you want to share with us today, Jelena?
Well, I'm just I'd just love to invite everyone all across the island and coast to come on down to Victoria. There's such it's on from May 17th to November 5th. So there's plenty of time to kind of figure out the right time that might work for you. And it's really accessible to all ages. So yeah, I would just encourage everyone to come on down. And of course, I want to put in a plug to come to Shake Your Booty.
Yeah, for sure.
Dance on June the 10th. And the event, if you go on to, there's a Facebook event page. And the best way to reach it is to go on Facebook, look for Queerly Victoria.
Oh, I see. Okay.
If you go to Queerly Victoria, you'll see the event posted there and you'll see updates on it. So you click on the event page, like the event page, and then there's links to purchasing tickets. And we look forward to seeing you all there. It'll be great fun. Yeah, as I mentioned, tickets are selling fast. So.
Well, just like queer at sea, like we're at everywhere. We're here, we're there. Now we're at sea, and this is gonna be sort of like a highlight.
They will.
I'm so glad that you came on the show today, Jelena, and we'll catch you next time. Hopefully, we'll see you soon in one of the events of the Queer at Sea thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
See you at the
Thanks for joining us today. Much appreciated.
Yeah, great having this chat with you guys. It's been really fun.
All righty.
Join us at the Maritime Museum of BC's Queer at Sea exhibit, Tales of the 2S LGBTQ Community. The exhibit runs from May 17th to November 5th, and we hope to see you there. Part of Maritime Museum's Queer at Sea exhibit, we are doing a fundraiser with the fantastic explosive sounds of Queer as Funk from Vancouver. The event is going to be June 10th at the Armories, Bay Street Armories in Victoria. You can find tickets on the Facebook page Queerly Victoria, and there you'll find the event page for the Queer as Funk Hey Sailor Dance.
Thank you so much for joining us today on Queer View Mirror. As queer people, I really believe it's important that we support our queer family. So please, this summer, get down to Victoria and join us at the Maritime Museum of British Columbia for this fantastic exhibit.
Yes, our community has so much to celebrate, so much to share, and so much to show. So please watch that exhibit down in Victoria. It's going on until mid-November. So in the meantime, we're going to have to say goodbye for now. This is Queer View Mirror. Catch you next time.